PhD in Progress Episode 9. This week, we sit down with Amy Pszczolkowski to discuss what to expect from your career services office, how to find success in networking, and why you should start your career search now. Let's go!
Microphone wasn't on, so not nearly as profound as it seemed like it was.
Welcome back to the PhD in Progress podcast, where we talk about your education, your career, and your life. I'm Jason.
I'm Abigail.
And I'm Nikhil. And today we're going to talk about career services. First, how you can learn about and contact the career services office at your school. And two, how you can take action in planning your career search and executing it.
So today we have a guest with us. Amy Pszczolkowski is here from our Office of Career Services, and she specializes in helping graduate students with their career search. Say hi, Amy.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't we start with talking a little bit about the role of the Career Services Office and how students can find them and what they can expect.
Great. So I think that career services for graduate students has been evolving over the last probably 2 decades. We've been serving graduate students for about 25 years, and I think that graduate students often don't know about us coming into graduate school because a lot of times they come directly from undergraduate institutions and maybe didn't utilize their career centers as
they were going to grad school.
Yeah. Right. So they might be talking more to their faculty about grad school options and not using career services. So I often find that they have really limited knowledge about how we can assist them from the beginning of grad school the whole way through. So, there's a lot that graduate students can take advantage of in their career centers. I'm seeing, a trend more and more that there's a dedicated career counselor just for the graduate students in a lot of the universities. And so seeking out that person is important when starting to look at what they might want to do after graduate school.
Another reason I think maybe you don't see students as much is that students in graduate school often don't start thinking about their career search until the end. So when would you say is the right time to come to career services for the first time?
Well, I think as soon as a student starts to have an inkling that maybe a research career isn't in their future, or which could be as early as the first year.
Right.
Or for some.
Some of us came in knowing that.
Right. And then some come in. I think as early as the first year is a good time to plug in because you actually want to use your career center for support and resources and tools to kind of think about how to make a transition after graduate school. And you can't do all of that and complete a dissertation in your final year. It's just too much. So the earlier they can come in, it's much better for us to be able to work with them throughout their 5 years on campus.
Or more.
Yeah.
So what kind of support, resources, and tools can people expect to find?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's, the counseling aspect or the advising aspect, and that's invaluable just to have sort of a thought partner in the process, someone to bounce ideas off of. Graduate students often have limited knowledge of careers outside of their specific domain and area of expertise in their field.
We know a lot about one thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's great, but, career counselors have broad exposure to a lot of fields and can tell you about a lot of different areas. You can plug in from government to nonprofit to private sector, industry kinds of things. So just being able to bat ideas around and brainstorm ideas with somebody is helpful. And then there's assessments and inventories that you can do. So a lot of centers offer Myers-Briggs type indicator, which some people hate, some people love. Thinking about personality, skills assessment, and other kinds of career inventories that we offer.
And you guys have a whole library too, don't you, of books about resume writing and stuff like that.
We do. A lot of our resources have migrated to the internet now, so you can find a lot of free, valuable information on Career Center's websites. A lot of the books and directories that we used to have in our libraries are now all online, mostly for free. So if you don't have a robust Career Center at your university, you could look at other universities' career resources. I think Penn, just a shout out to Penn, has a really great website with great resources by industries and tools for graduate students.
That's something we've thought about a lot is, we're fortunate to be at an institution with a lot of resources, but for people that aren't in that kind of position, they really have to branch out to get the kind of help that we can get by coming to visit you. Mm-hmm. So tips like that are, I think, really useful to our broad listener base.
And I'll say this up front, anything we mentioned today we'll put in the show notes, so if you want to go to phdinprogress.com and look at this episode, and I'll include in the iTunes, so it'll be on your iPod or iPhone or whatever iDevice you want. If you look in the notes, you just click on the links for those. Oh, I had a question. Does your office focus mostly on non-academic jobs or non-research jobs?
So that's a great question. I think a lot of career centers are focused on both. So being at a research institution, you might not get as much advising from your faculty advisor about other non-academic opportunities, like at liberal arts colleges, more teaching-focused institutions. So I've helped a number of graduate students over the years that want that type of academic position, bypassing the postdoc and going right into a tenure track job. So, for example, one from MAE, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, I worked with last year, wanted to go teach physics at a liberal arts college. So her advisor sort of didn't really know what to do with that. So we worked together. Shocking. So we worked together to figure out a plan on how to craft her documents properly, to focus on teaching, not focus so much on the research, and basically align herself with more the mission and the values of a small teaching college. So academic side we help, but then of course on the industry side as well for helping students plug into a variety of careers and fields.
What if you've been out for a little while? So like I'm graduating. Can I call you again 3 years from now when I'm going back on the job market and get help then?
You can. Not all. Answer? Yes, you can. Not all universities offer just sort of unlimited services and support.
Lifetime guarantee.
Lifetime support for their graduate alumni. So we're very fortunate to hear, again, that is a possibility for anyone who's a grad alum. But there are some universities that have to charge for those services and for some of the usage of their resources.
That's another possibility for people maybe that are at an institution where they don't have strong career services. Your undergraduate institution may be able to continue to support you, and that's something probably worth looking into if you're at that stage.
Right. There are resources like the Versatile PhD website that have just made a big switch to the schools that subscribe to their, what do they call it, premium content area. Graduate alumni will now be able to get into the premium content as well. So there is recognition that this is just not a problem of resources and support for graduate students just finishing the PhD, but for people that have gone on to a 3-year postdoc and then are finding themselves at another transition point in life and looking for support.
Well, and now that people don't stay in the same job for their entire life anymore,
right,
I imagine we'll be looking for new opportunities on a pretty regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Unless I get tenure.
Yeah, which would be great.
Which would be great. Fingers crossed.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about some of the common struggles that graduate students face, and specifically in their job search. So, what kind of questions they come to you with, and
patterns that repeat, regardless of discipline.
So the biggest one I see is they don't even know where to begin. And I think that's really...
Amen.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. That's really common when they've been on a trajectory straight through academia, right into grad school, never stop to look around and see about jobs or anything like that, that they're at a complete loss as to where to even begin the process. So we start there with thinking about process. and what that might look like depending on what they're interested in. In some processes, some fields, it's a pretty straight process, like when the companies recruit, when they might be coming to your campus for information sessions or coming to a career fair on campus or a networking event. Other fields are wide open. They recruit at all times during the year, and so the process is a little more hard to get a handle on. So depending on where they are in their PhD, they may step into the process at different times. So just where to begin is a very common thing. And often you don't want to begin with, let's convert their CV to a resume. That's usually not the right place to begin. It really could begin with an open conversation.
About what to do.
What your interests are, what your values are, what's important to you in life, what you wanted to be when you were 5, just talking about dreams and that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, my sense, both, doing this podcast and talking to my friends, is that people really have a very narrow focus of what they think is possible for them because they've been tracked in this very depth-oriented field. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, oh, but there's depth.
Depth-oriented. With a P.
Not depth. No, please. Depth.
I thought you worked on the retina.
Yeah, sorry, I can't enunciate today. No, but because they go so deep in a particular topic, they tend to have a limited worldview of what's available. They're like, oh, I'm a biologist, that there's only so many biology jobs out there.
And another problem is because biologists are often at the bench, we have so many technical skills that, that's your day in and day out most of the time, or maybe writing a report every now and then, but you have that tunnel vision of, I have these skills, what jobs can I do? I can go to a pharmaceutical company maybe, or...
Right, how do I continue to do what I've been doing?
Yeah, right. When really you have to think a little more outside that box that you've been in.
So do you have any advice specifically for how to think more broadly about your skills and what you can bring to the table?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think where I start is thinking back almost to undergraduate years and thinking about the things that you enjoyed doing as an undergrad outside of the lab. If you were a science major, you probably spent also a lot of time in the lab as an undergrad, but what were some of the activities you were involved in? What were some of the things you enjoyed doing in your spare time? What did you read for fun? That's a way to get back to broader you in a former life where, before you get to
grad, to have fun.
Right. When you used to remember those days?
Yeah, vaguely.
Pizza, beer, and video games. That's what mine was like.
Pleasure reading? What's that?
But I read 3 books this weekend. 3 whole books.
Oh my God.
Well, you're a doctor now. You don't have to work.
I know.
The jealousy is so intense.
My lab gave me a Kindle gift card as a...
Nice.
I remember that. That's a great gift.
So I've been making use of it. So
now that you're employed, you're getting back to some of those interests and those things that you had. But getting back to what you said, Jason, about video games, to me, that's a clue to something you might, other than it's a stress relief and it's a fun thing to do and to hang out with your friends maybe and do that, but maybe there's something more to that. So sometimes we'll take a little clue like that and explore that. And it just gets you thinking outside the box. It gets you thinking about, oh, I never thought about my interest in that as a possible, career, or what do people that make these games do, and what kinds of skills do they have, and would they want a PhD type to kind of advise them or consult with them on some of the games that they're developing.
You could certainly test.
Yes, you could be a game tester.
All the time.
That sounds horrible, first of all. We won't go into this. It's not a video game podcast, but that sounds horrible.
Or you could be the guy who comes up with realistic scenarios for zombie apocalypse or viral.
Oh, they're gonna say realistic games
no, just
shopping cart simulator 2014.
Because there are some professors here who advise for Hollywood and do fact checking for science in Hollywood movies. So there must be some equivalent for the video game industry. Mm-hmm. Or if there isn't, you should start it.
That sounds good. Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
there you go.
That can be your entrepreneurship.
Yes.
What about networking? Okay, networking is something that we've talked about being important before, but it's something I think a lot of people struggle with, figuring out how to start doing, figuring out how to introduce themselves, figuring out what it actually means to network, which, in my mind means talking to people you don't know in the hopes that they'll be able to help you, which sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So can you give us some specific tips about how we can sort of utilize this nebulous, terrifying tool to help position us better for the future?
Yeah, I usually tell graduate students not to think of it so much as networking, but just having conversations with people. And so to make it more comfortable and to get used to doing that is start with your closest circle of friends. You all have graduate school friends. Start with some of those people. Go beyond your department. Start talking to people outside of your department. Then start to build on who they might know. So you just sort of want to build out your network instead of thinking about starting on the outside and trying to leverage all those nebulous people out there. But start from the inner core and work your way out. And that will... One, you'll gain confidence. You'll gain skills at networking. You'll figure out the good questions to ask and the dumb questions that people don't want to talk about or answer, I talk to so many grad students that are like, as soon as I started doing a little bit of this, it got to be a little addictive and it got to be a little bit fun, and they learned a ton. You can't think about it as immediate results. You might start to talk to people, nothing might happen, and then a couple months down the road, you may reconnect, and that's where maybe conversations begin to expand a little bit. I mean, a great example of that is Susan May, who's a grad of this university, who wrote the book, So What Are You Going to Do With That? For PhDs. And she talks in her book about having coffee with somebody at the arts and science group. And it was just because she was doing informational interviewing, learning about the arts and science group. And there were no jobs. The woman said, "Oh, you'll never get a job here because nobody ever leaves." Well, 2 years later, turns out this woman was relocating because of her husband's job and remembered that conversation with Sue and called her up, kept her business card, called her up and said, "I'm actually leaving. I think you really should apply for this job." So 2 years later, a networking conversation paid off for her in a big way. And she stayed with that company for a few years. Right? And now well, she's moved on into another field now. But,
So you're planting seeds.
You are.
Really.
Exactly. You're planting
and
seeds.
It takes time.
Right.
You have to start early because you don't know when somebody in your network is going to get back to you.
Right.
But also remember, that's not the only benefit. It's not only just getting a job. So when I network, I try learning about different types of jobs that there are. Mm-hmm. And so this is all gathering information that's beneficial for me, and hopefully I can provide some kind of benefit to whoever I'm talking to as well, give them some more information as well, too.
Yeah, you mentioned the informational interview. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
So it's really just having conversations with people. It's really just interviewing them as though you're a reporter and you're trying to investigate a little bit more about their career path, what they do in their current work day to day. I mean, there's so many jobs out there that have these job titles and you're like, what is that? Like, when I first stumbled upon user experience research, I'm like, well, what do you do day to day? Like, what?
Sounds vaguely illegal.
Yeah. So, I talked to a few people in the field just professionally for me to educate myself and just do informational interviews to kind of understand that work in that field and what kinds of skills you need to do that. And that's where then you can say, oh, that sounds like it could be something I'd be very interested in, or not, and move on to the next field, into the next crazy career title you come across. So, so it's just about interviewing people and gathering information and learning and connecting, using their network to kind of connect out even more.
Are there any specific services that a career office like yours might provide to help people network?
Well, I'm really shocked that people don't know more about LinkedIn. I mean, I think you've talked about it before on other podcasts, but there's really a lot of depth to LinkedIn, and it surprises me when graduate students haven't plugged into that resource. It's at the basic level, it's free. And there's billions of people on it, so...
It's weird. It's like that thing that grad students don't go into. They don't apply on LinkedIn or get a profile, but everyone else I know who's outside of academia, they know it very well.
Yeah.
They use it all the time.
So you're missing out on a huge opportunity there if you're not on LinkedIn. And there's this fabulous newer section on LinkedIn called the Alumni section. If you're under network and you drop down to Alumni, you can search by your undergraduate institution, your graduate institution, and find people by location, career field, industry, and it's just amazing who you can find to connect with out there. So that's kind of a little hidden thing that people aren't finding on LinkedIn that they should know about.
So can you talk a little bit about alumni as a
Sure.
resource? Because I think that's something I hadn't considered in my career search, but I know that a lot of institutions have really strong alumni network, and I think they're probably usually willing to help, but it would not occur to me to ask someone by basis of our shared alma mater.
So we just had our reunions weekend here, so it's a good time to talk about the Alumni Network. We have something called the Alumni Career Network, which is a group of volunteers that have offered to provide informational interviews, advice, in some cases hosting you for a day on the job to see
Like shadowing?
job shadowing.
That's
to
cool.
see what you do. And as well as people that are more actively interested in helping you plug into their organization for an internship or a full-time opportunity. So you can search a database and tap into that resource for connecting with people by location, again, by industry, field, job title, an employer. Let's say you're looking to work at a particular organization that you're very passionate about. I advise grad students to go see who in your alumni network is at that organization. That's an easy connection you can make rather than just submitting to the black hole of the internet.
Right, instead of cold emailing,
Right.
you can at least cold email someone with whom you have something in common.
Right.
Who are volunteering their information, so they're
Right.
even more likely to get back to you.
Right. So we have a very generous alumni group here, and I think a lot of universities experience the same thing with their alums that are willing to provide great advice and help to the current students. It's a way they can give back to their institution that costs them a little bit of time. And it kind of makes you feel good. When you've been on the receiving end of that kind of help, you kind of want to give back. So all of you will, at some point when you become alumni, will want to give back. Like your podcast is a way of giving back to the universe.
Doing it right
You're
now.
doing it,
This is
right.
it.
Living proof of the Alumni Network at work. So
I'm sharing with current students.
that's
Jason and
right.
Nikhil.
That's
Yes.
right.
You're welcome,
Good
universe.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn has been a good way to find alumni too. And you mentioned this, but I remember very vividly coming into the office a couple of years ago, and that was surprising that LinkedIn was your number one recommendation was get on LinkedIn, start stalking people.
Did I say that?
I think you did.
Okay.
Confirmation. I also had an interview with you
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, and
Same
you
as
said
I.
stalk these people.
No, but the idea is, if you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and you find someone out there who's doing something that you're interested in, then you want to see how they got to where they are. And LinkedIn has all that information, like where they went to school, what they studied, what other jobs they had.
Right.
And so you can kind of see other people's trajectories and use that as a template for your own.
And that can be really useful. And the other thing, I think, to keep in mind when you're introducing yourself either to alumni or other people, is that most people are flattered to find out that you want to do the thing they're doing, right? Part of the reason I got the position I'm starting, I think, was that I emailed someone who has it now and said, I want the job you have. When is application season? And we met for coffee and we talked about the whole thing, and he told me who I should get in touch with to find out when applications were due, and I got a better sense of the program and what they were looking for and what the responsibilities were, because basically we did an informational interview. But he was very receptive to the fact that, I want your life. What do I need to do to get it? Someone thinks you've made good enough choices that they want to make those same choices.
It is flattering.
It's kind of
I think it is
flattering, and I think
flattering.
most people are receptive to that. And I hesitated before I sent that email because I wasn't sure that I wanted to do it, and then I thought, well, if someone emailed me and said, I want your life, how do I get the job you have? I would be willing to help them. So
some really just practical, I think sometimes students are really reluctant to reach out, even when it's what I call a warm network through your alumni association, is to find that thing you can connect on. whether it's, of course, it's going to be the university if it's an alum, or it's your department if it's somebody from your department, or it's a shared interest that you can figure out from looking at them in their background on LinkedIn as much as you can see. So finding like something that intrigues you about that person is the first step in like crafting a really nice introductory email to say, oh, I see you did X and I'm really interested in that also. Could we just talk for 10, 15 minutes? You want to be really respectful, I think, of people's time because they are very busy people doing these jobs. But I think, you'll find a lot of success with just making a very well-crafted, targeted outreach email to somebody. And you have to try it to get started with it. And then I think people are pleasantly surprised how
So
receptive.
what sorts of information would want to go into that email?
So I think introducing yourself is a really key thing. Not paragraphs, not your life history, but a couple sentences to give them an idea of where you are in life. If you're a fourth-year student, if you're a first-year student, there's kind of differences there in terms of your experience level. So give them some idea what year you are, obviously what department you're in, maybe a little snippet of your research if it seems to pertain, but often it doesn't pertain to maybe what you're interested in speaking to them about. And then, why you're interested in them is sort of the next piece of that email, is what about their profile intrigues you. Is it location matters, or is it their field, their company, their organization? So put something about that in the email, as well as your ask. What are you asking for? Be specific. I'm asking for a conversation, or I have a couple questions. Could I email you my questions? So be really specific with people. People are really busy. And so don't beat around the bush, get right to business. Mm-hmm. Business people tend to be really direct. Mm-hmm. Don't make it too long or they're not going to read like a page.
Would you say put it in the subject line?
Subject lines are key. So if you're reaching out to somebody who's from your university, you may want to put the name of the university in the subject line. That's like a great strategy to say X university, referral or something like that. For our system, it will populate the subject line with Alumni Network referral. So people getting that will kind of know, they're getting me through this system. But if you have to create your own subject line, something to connect why you're reaching out to them through the university is a good one.
And are there questions that people probably shouldn't ask in this email?
Well, I don't know that there's, I don't know that you want to...
How much money do you make?
There you go. Yeah, I don't know that you want to lay out like your list of 50 questions for them in an email, but an ask in terms of, would you be willing to have a brief conversation with me? Or would you be willing to answer a few questions by email for me? What would you prefer, if you're open to that, what would you prefer? Like ask their preference. Some business people will just pick up the phone and call you. I've had students
Which would be shocking.
Right. I've had students come back and they're like, I had no idea. They just picked up the phone and called my cell phone right then after I sent the email.
This happened to me recently, actually. Through another fellow student, I was introduced to a recruiter who specializes in neuroscience jobs. And so I sent him an email, and literally 5 minutes after I sent the email, I got a call, and he was like, he sort of explained to me how, more about what he did as a recruiter and how that would fit in with my interests. And, he basically told me to get in touch with him again closer to the time when I would be wanting a job. So
okay.
I was surprised.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It takes you off guard because in academia, things don't move that quickly. But when they see a hot candidate or they see somebody that has some potential and some interest, folks will often get right on it. And then the opposite is often true, is that somebody might be on vacation and not have put their out of office message on, or a family emergency comes up and they're out for a couple weeks, and so that can often delay the process of getting back to you quickly. But don't despair, don't give up on that person. Just give them a little courtesy of time to get back to you.
I mean, how persistent should someone be? If you don't get a response, is it okay to send more than one follow-up email? What would you say? You don't want to be annoying either, right? So
I've seen it handled in different ways. I would definitely give them like the courtesy of like 2 weeks before you start sending follow-up emails. I sent this to you 2 weeks ago. Why haven't you responded? And you want to take some tact in that. And so often when that happens to me, because my email is backlogged, a student might write to me and say, I don't know if this email reached you, but I sent this to you a couple weeks ago. Would you have any advice for me, or would you have time to look at my documents, or maybe it's set up an appointment? So, sometimes that can happen to people, and you just have to be patient and find a polite way to try to reconnect with them.
I think in emails where I've introduced myself, I'd say, I'll send you another email in a week just to catch up, just in case. It sets a timeline already, and that way you don't really catch them off guard.
That's clever. I like it.
That's good. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about career exploration, how to figure out what you want to do, how to talk to people and learn more about specific careers. But then how do you take it to the next step? Like once you've identified a career path for yourself, how do you go about submitting your resume to the right people, and what does that process look like?
So if you've done a pretty good job of exploration, it might naturally just evolve for you into the next step of application. So that might involve then reconnecting with some people that you had conversations with to thank them and say, I'm so interested in this. I'm going to pursue some jobs. I just wanted to reach out and thank you again, which is another way of letting them
remind
know
you that I exist.
By the way, I'm job searching.
For anybody,
exactly.
I would be awesome.
Exactly. Or it might be a different ask at that point to say, now that I'm going to pursue this and I'm closer to graduation, would you recommend any conferences I should be going to? A lot of professional conferences are a great opportunity to network some more with people that may be at the level of hiring managers. Mm-hmm. So they'd be more apt to have conversations at a different level with you at a professional meeting or conference, as well as just kind of mapping out for yourself the best resources you can find for job boards and targeting organizations. And then you just have to start hitting it hard with applications and putting stuff out there and trying to find that connection within that organization to help get your materials in front of the right people. So then there might be the process also of crafting your materials, of targeting your, writing a very targeted cover letter, a little targeted CV converted to a resume that needs to be tweaked a little bit. So there's a lot to the application once you've started to figure out what direction you're moving for actual job searching.
Mm-hmm. So these materials vary a lot from field to field. I mean, I know that academia has its own specific set of requirements, but if you're going into the corporate world, is a resume kind of a resume? Or I guess your skills would vary. What you want to emphasize would vary.
Yeah, so I think in that way, there's a lot of customization that you should do to your materials before you submit them. I think the mistake that gets made is that, okay, I've got a resume for the nonprofit world. That's going to work for every organization I apply to in the nonprofit world, but that may be in different, there might be a health-related nonprofit, and so you want to focus more on your health-related interests versus something that's maybe more focused on women's issues, so you have to really think about that in terms of targeting and looking at the mission of each organization and how your background might fit for them and making the case. Like in each case, you're making the case to that organization why you should take a look at me, what I have to offer, what demonstrates interest and motivation for that particular field or organization. And that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
If you've done an application, it takes a lot of time and energy to craft those cover letters and convert those CVs to resumes.
Right. Yeah, looking for a job is a full-time job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is another reason you should do that before you write your dissertation, because that's also a full-time job. And doing both at once is just too much.
Unless you don't want to sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the problems I'm having right now is that I think I'm pretty good.
Looking.
I'm too good looking and too strong and too funny. We all know this. another problem I'm having, I have so many problems, is that I'm fairly good at making or converting a CV to a resume for a specific job. But what happens when you're having this informational interview with someone and they're like, oh, can I have a resume for this job that doesn't exist yet? What do you do then? Because the resume, at least what I've been told, is that it should be very targeted and make you basically sell your best points as to why you should be the one hired for position X. But if the position is position A through D that doesn't exist yet, how do you make a resume geared towards that?
Well, if you've had a conversation with somebody at the organization, maybe they've given you some hints as to what skills or what, I mean, that would be a question I would ask, is what are you looking for? What kinds of skills, what kinds of people really fit well within this organization? And then I would stall and ask them if you could send it to them in a couple days when you're
Oh, yes.
you've got a lot going on the next couple days and need a little bit of time, and find a way to customize it a little bit for them, or at least look at it again to say, okay, is it general enough that it's not going to eliminate me maybe from an opportunity that they have down the road?
And if you know what kind of company it is, I would think, you have some idea of what they want.
Yeah.
But they may not care if you can pipette, that's for sure.
Well, and you can think of it as like a selection process, right? You have some idea of what you want and what your strengths are. And so if you put that on a resume and they're like, that's not what we're looking for, you've done yourself a huge favor.
Yes. That's very true.
Yeah.
I would hate to have a job I don't want.
Right, it's a two-way street. You have to be interested in them and they have to be interested in you.
Yeah, so maybe you want to make a resume for your ideal job, something about pizza and video games, and then see how that works out.
It's not my ideal job.
Okay. I know.
The beer part, though, yes.
More depth than that. Okay, well, we've talked a little bit about this, Amy, but what if your school does not have an active career services office? So we talked a little about stalking other schools' online presence. What other kinds of resources are available for people who are at the point of needing a little help with their career search?
So the National Career Development Association, the NCDA, actually has a list of certified career counselors. So if somebody was really looking for, a counselor kind of person to work with them, there's that resource to find a counselor. And there's a lot of non-certified career counselors out there that probably would be fantastic to work with too. So, but sometimes you want to just vet the person before you spend a lot of money invested in career counseling services. So you could look at that, as well as things that I've mentioned before, like using resources like the Versatile PhD, which has a lot of great forums where people share advice and share information, which I have found to be really good advice. And people are really generous with their answers and with their time on the Versatile PhD. There's things like the AAAS ScienceCareers.org website for scientists to get career advice and to get resources, and they have a jobs board and that type of thing.
I think a lot of professional associations have really, because ASCB, which is the Cell Biology Society, also has really pretty fantastic resources for career development.
There are a lot.
Whatever your field is, that's the place to look that I would not have thought to look.
That's so true. I was talking to the geoscience department this year, and I pulled up their association website, and they have a whole professional development career section on their website that most of them in the room, when I said, have you been to this, to look at the different fields, and they have interviews with people in different professions and different industries, and most of the grad students in the room had not even thought to go on to their professional association.
Well, when I went to the National ASCB meeting last year in December, they had, informational interviews, roundtables, CV evaluations by, if you were going into academia, people who volunteered to vet your CV and give you feedback, and all free for conference attendees. So if you're presenting anyway, look into that sort of thing, because they had a ton of stuff going on. I was really surprised.
Mm-hmm. And there's pretty much a professional association for every industry and every job function you might be interested in. So if you were interested in higher education administration jobs, you could go to ACPA or NASPA, and they have huge job fairs. And that's where you can learn about all kinds of openings and positions in higher ed administration, for example. So you can find something like that for almost every industry and every job function out there.
It really is, because I was not anticipating this, but I was looking up, I just Googled one day artificial organs, and I found the American Society for Internal Artificial Organs. And I was so surprised that there was actually a whole
society already.
Yeah. So it was great to just sign up, and now I'm going to a meeting in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So now if they're hearing this now,
They're one of our
coming.
dozens of listeners. Look
Dozens,
out.
Look for the
yes.
good-looking guy.
Yeah.
He's on his way.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of book resources out there. There's a number of books, and now I'm not going to be able to rattle them all off, but
You could send us a list and we could put them on our website.
yeah.
If there's some that you particularly recommend.
Yes. They're all on most Career Center's website. Will have sort of a list of book resources that graduate students should take a look at and could take a look at particularly for jobs outside of academia. That's a topic that's grown a lot in the last, few years. So there's more out there.
There are a bunch of free webinars online as well for people like us who might be looking at non-academic jobs. That's kind of a big trend right now, is to be putting on webinars for whatever field. So I figure out which societies they are, but we'll also put links for those on the show notes.
I think the New York Science Alliance might
They
be
do a
one.
ton
They
of
do a
stuff.
ton of professional development, and very affordable for a seminar if you're in the city. Yeah,
$15, something like that.
absolutely. So that's another great place just to network as well as get content about some of these topics we're talking about.
I made myself go to one of those sort of as practice, and it was something about education. And there I was at this, day-long seminar I went to by myself, and I was like, all right, I'm going to sit at a table and talk to people that I don't know, who obviously share my interests, because here they are, they have paid money to attend this same thing, that I have paid money to attend, and it was really hard. But I got better as the day went on, and I got home and said, I need to learn how to network a little better, because I really forced myself to be like, all right, I'm going to take this plate of crudité, and I'm going to go talk to these people, and we live in the same place, and we do the same things, and we care about the same things, and I still don't know what to talk about.
So do you have any tips for that situation? Because I've been there
what-
before, and that's the hardest thing. It's one thing if you're behind your computer and you're cold emailing someone, or you're behind a phone and you're cold calling someone. But if there's a physical person in a room with you and you want to talk to them and you don't know each other, what do you do?
Well, I tried to the first thing I learned when I got there is, I went in and there are big round tables, right, that seat 8 people or whatever for the actual seminar. This was a scientists teaching science seminar. And some tables are filled with people who know each other and are really dynamic because they're engaged with each other and they're having conversations and drinking coffee. And some tables are full of people who have shown up by themselves and are sitting quietly on their iPhones. And one of those tables is better to sit at if you want to meet people, and it's the one where stuff is happening. It would have been better for me to go sit with a bunch of people that already knew each other than to sit with a bunch of people who, like me, were there by themselves. Because I sat at the quiet table, and then, we made a little bit of small talk, but nobody was really conversing because nobody knew each other. And I would have had better luck, I think, fitting into a group that already existed and glomming onto them than doing it the way I did it. So next time I'm going to sit someplace that's already having fun, right? Find people that are having fun and then go hang out with them, because that's a little easier. And then at the cocktail hour, mostly I talked to people about where they lived, because in New York you can always talk about where you live, what neighborhood you live in, how far that is from the place that you work, and
The nearest train station, yes.
yeah. What's it like to live on Roosevelt Island? Tell me more about that. I've always wondered. So you can do that. But that's pretty specific geographically. But my advice would be sit with, even if the people already know each other and you're going to feel stupid, at least they're talking. Right, and you can talk.
At least they're cool kids. And
They're
that's what you
definitely,
should always do.
yes,
sit
and I
with the
did
cool
not
kids.
sit with the cool kids.
At the very least, you can stalk them and listen to
Yeah.
their conversation.
Well, and they're going to go to the bar later together, right? And you could go with them if you hung out with them all day, and then you could meet them.
Then you'll be a cool kid.
And then you'll be one of the cool kids. But if you hang out with everyone who's stag, no one wants to talk because it's 8 a.m. and, that, I don't know. That was my experience. I felt like I sat with the wrong people, and next time I won't do that.
No, that's good. I'll keep that in mind.
And you're a fairly outgoing person, too.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Depends on the situation, right?
I can be quite shy when I'm alone. Or when I don't know people.
I think it's good to go in those situations with like a handful of open-ended questions. So things like, tell me a little bit about your background, or, what brought you here today? I mean, just an opening line that will kind of engage the person, and then you can kind of take questions, build the conversation off of some of those questions. My husband tells me I could talk to a wall, so I've never
You're in the right profession.
I've never had trouble talking to strangers, which is why I was out till 1 a.m. Saturday night at reunions, because
Meeting all the alumni.
we were out meeting all the alums, and just it was fun. So
Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm. I guess one of the things that we were all really curious about is, some of the commonalities that graduate students share. I mean, you work with a lot of graduate students. You talk to a lot of them about their careers. I mean, can you give us a general sense about what our peers are concerned with and what they want, and maybe like what careers they end up pursuing? Or
yeah, I think there's some common fears about leaving academia that I hear a lot from graduate students. Fears about, will I ever be able to get back in if, I decide that a non-academic career is not a good fit for me? And fears and concerns over, disappointing people in their lives is really common. That I hear, people feel like they're going to let their advisor down, or feel like they're going to let their parents down. So those are really common barriers that I think we have to get through to kind of get to the next phase of like thinking more broadly about their options. People hold on to their, I think, academic identity very tightly. So often you have to sort of work through that. Sometimes I refer to it as a grieving process to get to a better place to begin thinking about career ideas. But it's that letting go that's very, very common, and a lot of people experience that. And then on the other hand, there's people that are ready to let go and
burn the place down on the way out.
right. Want nothing to do with it anymore, and are done. And their concerns are a bit different. Their concerns are about how do I have that conversation with my advisor, which you've talked about before, I think, and then just let's job search, let's get it done as fast as possible. And that's often like unrealistic, that they're done with the place and so they just want out. But the reality is a job search takes, as you guys know, a long time. So understanding that and thinking about that timeline in relation to other things they have going on is a concern.
And if you need an academic support group for these kinds of issues, go on Twitter. There's a lot of people who are frustrated with academia, and they're very vocal about it. So even just reading other people's experiences can be cathartic. So I would say, LinkedIn and Twitter. And I hope they're going to pay us for the advertisement.
We really should. Yeah. We need new microphones.
That's how I feel about the versatile PhD too, is that's a really good safe space to
have that
conversation with others who are experiencing the same thing, and to feel supported in that way. So, do you want more concerns, or is that enough?
No, that was great. I think
there's a lot.
There's a lot, but we don't want to make people depressed or
no. This process should be empowering.
Right,
I think,
exactly.
As you're thinking about the next phase of life and what you're going to do, we want that to be more exciting and empowering than depressing.
Where were you for episode 1?
I was here.
No, I know.
You just didn't come find me.
No, that's how we should have opened this whole thing. I guess, is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you think is really important for people to hear? Just to say that, look around on your campus and at your institution for the supportive people. If you're not getting it in your department, guaranteed there's other people on campus that graduate students can tap into, not only in the Career Center, but in the McGraw Center or the Teaching and Learning Center or the writing program. I talked to a history PhD who's like in her 6th year, and she said,
I now feel, now that I'm out of the library and done with the research, I feel more connected to the university than I ever have, because I'm out with different departments doing different things, getting different experiences. And so I think if you can do that earlier on as a grad student, you'll feel more supported and feel more connected and less isolated at your institution. So that's what I would say is, capitalize on the amazing place you are and tap into every possible resource you can find, whether it's the Career Center or another center related to your interests, because guaranteed there's something there for everyone's interest out beyond your academic department.
And even before you think you're ready, right?
Yes.
That's because you would not laugh at someone that came in their first year and said, I have 5 more years of this program, but I want to talk to you. You would probably be thrilled.
I want to see them. I applaud them. When the first year religion PhD walked into my office this fall and said, I don't think I want to do academia. I'm really interested in radio. How can I get some experience? And so there we go. That's
I know this guy's listening too.
Probably.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to me when I talk to the first year students who have this whole time ahead of them
for exploration,
professional development, skill building. That's what it's all about. So start early, come in as soon as you get here, come often.
I think a lot of people forget that the PhD is for training you. You're expected to do all these research things and discover something new about the world, but at the end of the day, it's also about developing yourself, and I think that sometimes gets lost.
Right, and that's what we'd like to emphasize today, is the things that you can do based on the things we've talked about. So one is thinking about your interests outside of your work and what your interests have been, and your back when you were fun, what you did, right? And starting to have that conversation, and then thinking about how that translates into skills and careers, how to meet people who have those jobs, how to make the connections to learn more about those jobs, and then how to go and get them. And those are the sorts of things your career office can help you with.
So
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Amy. This has been really helpful. I think even just for me reminding myself what that whole process looks like from beginning to end.
And that you're in the middle, right?
Right.
Even
in
though,
progress.
Right.
It can feel interminable, but sometimes you just need to remember you've already come a long way.
Right.
You've made a lot of important decisions and ruled things out, and you're making progress. That's the progress part. Yeah.
Nailed it.
Thanks to Nikhil, Abigail, and our very special guest, Amy Pszczolkowski. She definitely helped us a lot in our own career searches, and we hope the information she shared will be helpful for you too. If you haven't yet, reach out to your institution's Office of Career Services, then let us know how your experience went. Leave us a comment at phdinprogress.com/9 or email us at feedback@phdinprogress.com. You should also talk with us on Twitter. We're at PhD Podcast. If you enjoy the content of the show, please share us with your friends, your lab mates, your classmates, your department, or anyone else it might help. Also, if you have 30 seconds to do so, the best way to support us is to leave an honest review and rating in the iTunes Store. It definitely goes a long way to boost our visibility and helps us improve the show. As always, all the resources we mentioned today, including the iTunes Store link, can be found at phdinprogress.com.
This process should be empowering.
Right, exactly.
As you're thinking about the next phase of life and what you're going to do, we want that to be more exciting and empowering than depressing.
Where were you for episode 1?